Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I've started to get this question a bit more frequently about how I create my content. So, to those of you that are asking, or just happen to stumble upon this video, here's the video for you. While it won't be a step-by-step guide to creating a video just like me, it'll be a general overview of my process from start to finish. I will also be stating the software and hardware I'll be using, but just know that you do not have to match anything that I'm using. Another side note though, I highly recommend being somewhat knowledgeable on my content, as I will be using examples from a lot of it. You don't have to go and watch all 300 plus videos of mine, but just knowing my general style of each of my series will help understand the examples that I show, especially since some of them are previous videos that I just ended up doing. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and start with the obvious. You can't do anything until you get an idea. Obviously, I can't tell you how to form ideas, as that's where some imagination comes into play. I just say, whenever something pops up into your head, write it down and think about it for a little bit. Even the smallest ideas I've had have turned into my biggest videos that I've made. Now, there are a few ways you can get to the brainstorming phase, and that's scouting. This can be physically, or at digital locations, or even scouting other material for inspiration. Scouting is one of the most important things when coming up with an idea, as any idea will thrive based on the environment. For example, going to a physical location can spring, new ideas to life on what exactly to film there. Some of my videos would have never come to life without visiting some of these weird locations I've been to. Of course, you can always scout them out digitally on a mapping application of your choice, but going to the physical location and taking pictures is always good for later use. Digitally scouting is in a different ballpark though. While it's not as much as a physical strain, it does take some patience finding exactly what you're going for, or at the very least, what you're willing to compromise with. Unless of course, you have that sort of skill where you can make exactly what you want, but that's a different story. I do a ton of green screen backgrounds and Gary's mod, so searching the Steam Workshop for maps helps spawn a ton of ideas. This can be as simple as just using the GM construct, or going weird and using some of these various user-generated maps. It all depends on what you're going for, and you can see a ton of content all filmed in Gary's mod from myself. Obviously, not every idea is going to require scouting, as some may be simpler than others. Take my cast member stories for example. It's just me recording my voice lines from a previous, life stories, and using B-roll footage from previous videos. Not much thought into it aside from writing down my past events. Another thing is using source material for inspiration. For my gaming hour show, I actually record all of my gameplay footage before doing anything. I take notes of what I did, and might even throw in a joke here or there I thought of while recording. While I was writing this, I was actually writing the third episode at the same time as writing this script, but just know that as of me recording my lines right now, I just finished the fourth episode. Just know that even something as simple as recording anything can help spawn ideas. Again, this whole chapter is sort of subjective and confined to the ideas that you can produce. Not everyone can come up with a great idea just like that, and it might take days to even weeks to come up with something cool. While my feature films were quick to write, they were in the brainstorming phase for months to even years. Not every idea is going to work right now, and it's okay to shelf them for later. It's always important to write down what you're thinking, even if it's jumbled nonsense. Speaking of that, it's time to move on to the next phase of pre-production. Writing scripts and such can be as simple as you want it to be. You don't have to write these fancy old scripts if you're the only person reading them. Most of my videos never move hands, as I'm the one doing everything from start to finish. The only time you have to, give your script some explanation is when you're changing hands. I'll get into that in a moment though, and let's talk about the overall writing process. A vast majority of the videos on my channel are scripted. Yeah, some going a little bit off the script, while others follow them to a T. This video you're watching right now is even scripted, and the writing phase is crucial, as it's the first part of telling your story. You can do this digitally with programs like Microsoft Word, like I do, or you can use free programs like Google Docs or whatever else is out there. You can even go crazy and actually handwrite your scripts like I used to do way back in high school. Just for the sake of this video, I'll be using Microsoft Word. This is the hardest part of any project, even for non-content creation purposes. Starting. Yeah, sometimes I have a hard time getting started on any project, and that's why some videos don't come out when I want them to, as the ideas just aren't there yet, and that's okay. staring at this blank piece of digital paper isn't going to get your ideas out either. This is why I said it's nice to, write your ideas down. I have both a physical and digital notepad that I have everything in. Going back to Watersurf's gaming hour, you remember how I told you I write everything down? Well, here's a notebook for the series. As you can see, I have pages of stuff that I did in the game. I also watched back the footage from the video game and sort of put 2 and 2 together to get a script. Sometimes, even just doing an outline of how you want your script to go helps in the long run. You don't exactly have to follow a traditional script when creating videos online, but it does help keep everything together when you do. Another writing thing I do is I walk around in the Garry's Mod maps and write down dialogue for specific characters and how I want them to interact with the environment. For my recent episode of Watersurf's Idea Factory, while it's mainly just me talking to myself for however many minutes, the backgrounds serve a purpose for the script as the environment shows where they are. I don't know if I'm making much sense here, but it's just something that you have to trust me on, okay? This video in particular is being written sort of like my side tangent videos are, where I'm discussing things in a paragraph and slowly moving to different topics as I jump from paragraph to paragraph. It's just like writing an essay, but having the visual elements to help explain your dialogue that you're reading. Basically, your scripts can look like this, to even like this. Hell, even just using your outline and improvising when recording works too. It's all what type of content you're trying to go for. As long as it's not those lazy reaction videos, of course, you're pretty much good. Alright, so now you got your script in hand, and the next part is setting up your video. This can range from going to a physical location, shoot, or even setting up a green screen. It's just as important to have everything you need for whatever you're doing. I would even say setting up is getting your script ready too, especially if you are changing hands. You might have written the video, but your buddy is going to be the one that films it. Having notes and such on the side helps describe your vision. It can help out if you're changing hands. Mostly all of my videos are directed by myself as well, so I don't really have to have these like notes or whatever on my scripts. The only exception is when certain scenes are on certain things, such as this part is on a green screen and this part is filmed somewhere else. Even highlighting the different characters in a script can help you not get lost in the walls of dialogue. Moving on to the production side. You're now at your desired location and it's time to get started. For my videos in particular, I have a ton of equipment that I use, so let's go ahead and talk about the physical stuff first. Starting off, I have a green screen setup. This is just a green cloth that I hang up. You can find this whole setup online or go with an easy pop-up depending on what you're trying to film. I usually go with my entire body and do zoom-ins and post, but that's something I'll get into later. If you do film on a setup like mine, I highly recommend having a nice cloth and having it very tight with these clamps so you don't have any wrinkles that'll show up on your footage. Trust me, it makes it a nightmare when doing VFX work. Speaking of that, don't wear any green while filming on a green screen or wearing blue on a blue screen. It's probably obvious, but I just want to state it just so I can, okay? Moving over to equipment. I currently film my main videos with a Panasonic HC X1500 and a Canon G7X Mark II as a secondary, which I use for like smaller projects like my surface level operation series or even vlogs or something. You can also use your smartphone, but for the love of all content creation, please turn your phone horizontally, okay? Now, if you're just filming in front of your computer or your monitor or whatever, I currently use an Elgato Facecam, just the regular HD version, but if you want to get fancy, you can always get a 4K webcam, but that's depending on what type of content you're going for. Anyway, I also do have an add-on accessory for my Panasonic. I don't really use it as it's intended, as I just use it to hold my microphone and occasionally use the built-in light for this accessory. But speaking of microphones, using the onboard audio is an alright option, but I prefer to use external equipment. I have two microphones that I use, the Kamaka CVM V30 Pro, which is a shotgun mic, and I also have the first model of the DJI mic, which happens to be in a bundle that has, two of these microphones with a receiver. With the DJI mics, you do have to set them up before using them, and there are a few tutorials online about getting the correct settings, as out of the box they aren't the best, and I found that lesson out the hard way with my Ghost subscribers side tangent video. For example, just for what my settings are, I have the dB set to -6, just as an example. Now, it doesn't exactly matter what type of brand your tripod is. for, you know, holding your camera, but I just happen to use this Sunpack Ultra Pro 643. Every tripod is quote unquote different, and this just happens to work with what I'm using it for. Now, I say different as in terms of certain tripods have certain weight limits, so if you do get a weaker tripod and you have a heavier camera, then you're probably going to have some sinkage on your tripod there. So I recommend doing your research and finding out what type of tripod works for your camera and vice versa. On top of that, you may not also be using a tripod depending on where you're filming. So like you're filming outdoors with your buddy, they may be holding your camera either with their hands, or they might be using an X grip or one of those other weird grips, or they might even be using a monopod. It all depends on what you're going for and what type of footage you're filming and how you're doing your setup. So yeah, another important thing is I highly recommend using a tripod for your green screen or blue screen setup, because if you have it all janky, and it's not going to come out the best, and you're going to be doing more VFX work than you want to be doing. But let's move over to lights, shall we? Honestly, I have no idea what lights I used to use that was in this B-roll footage, as it was just this bright bulb that I put up high so it gives, you know, more light upon my face. Wasn't the best setup, but yeah, I currently have a new setup because those lights ended up breaking shortly after filming that B-roll footage. So now I have this light setup from Sunpack. Yeah, it's going to be a trend with Sunpack because they do make a lot of products for consumer grade content creation, both them and newer. But I'm not going to get into brands here. I'm not exactly a lighting expert, but just make sure you're well lit on a green screen. And if you are more curious into that topic, I would recommend looking up a tutorial on how to light green screening, as my setup is extremely janky, and it works for me, but it may not work for you. I also have this janky remote setup for my camera, since Panasonic doesn't believe in using wireless remotes like Sony used to, because I used to have a Sony camcorder, but that's not important. I also have this teleprompter setup so I can read my lines off a little bit easier, and you know, that require long paragraphs like this. I would say I might be using this right now, but I ended up deciding to record my voice instead of physically being on a green screen to reduce my workload a little bit. Now, just a side note about the teleprompter, it's a newer teleprompter that you put like a tablet on. I put an iPad under there so I can read off the footage. Just keep in mind the teleprompter will add a little bit extra weight to your camera and your tripod, so be sure you do have a tripod that can support both if you decide to use a teleprompter like mine. After having everything set up and ready to go, it's time to start filming. You obviously might be moving around during filming, so make sure you are staying hydrated and have snacks and eat lunch and whatever, just for yourself and any cast and crew you are working with. Oh yeah, props are also important, but it also depends on what you need them for or what you're going for. But I already spent a long time on this chapter, so yeah, let's move on to filming. Getting out there and shooting your script, even if it's inside or on your computer. This is the part of creating content that is the second part of your story. You wrote your script, and now it's time to act it out or direct someone to act it out. Obviously, since I wrote my own script, I know how I want each character to act or what I want each character to do with their line. It's going to be a bit easier with a side tangent video as I'm just reading off lines, but I might put an emphasis on some words or go a little bit off script with an improvised joke here and there, like I've actually been doing in this video and like I'm doing right now. With actual scripts for my films or sketches, that's a bit of a different story. This is where you need to put your director's hat on and say, hey, I want this specific character to act like a little ditzy, while this one needs to act very angrily. It does help when you write characters with someone in mind. For example, when I write scripts with my friends, I write their characters similar to how they would act in real life, with just more exaggerated in order to, you know, play up their own strengths and weaknesses. It also makes directing a bit easier if you just let the actor play the character as they see fit, but then again, it's all up to you. Since I mainly film with me, myself, and I don't really have to worry about telling other people what to do. I have many different characters that I play, and they all have their own sorts of style in their videos. For example, when I play myself, specifically in my Idea Factory series or Blocksmates or something that's like in my film universe playlist, I usually tend to act a bit more annoyed and stressed out due to the stupidity of my other alternate selves. Now, my hero character is actually a knockoff version of All Might, but a bit more on the stupider side. Now, when I say All Might, I'm referring to My Hero Academia, and specifically the English dub version, because I actually have not watched the original Japanese, and you may call me a freaking weeb that likes their dubs, but hey man, I'm not gonna get into that here. Anyway, my climate change character is actually just a cringy mess. Now, enough of that. What's it like shooting your work? You can do it in one of two ways. You can just keep the camera rolling like I do with my Big Tony video, or record individual clips for every line like I do with most of my videos. I usually do the second one just because I have to wear multiple costumes and such, but you can do it sort of like both when acting with multiple people. Like for example, have the characters like say 3 or 4 lines and then cut, but it's going to be trial and error if you haven't done this before, and I would recommend even blocking out what you want to do before even filming, especially if you're not shooting on a green screen. Or you know, you can always just wing it like I always do. I would also recommend, if possible, shooting in order. I mean, follow your script from start to finish unless you physically cannot. Like, the beginning of your video takes place at night, but you're filming during the day right now. That obviously, that's okay, but it just makes it a bit easier on the post-production side. But if you know, this is just a guideline and you can completely ignore me, bro. The rest of filming is just working through your script and shooting what needs to be done. You can always do close-up shots and establishing shots or whatever other types of B-roll footage you might need during this time, as well as not, but it might not be even necessary depending on what you're working on. I actually do a few of these even for my green screen filming, especially when I need something to be hyper-focused on or other bits that I would think would be funny. An example is the spinning gun in my Persona 3 short, or the ultra close-up of my face in the greatest game of all time video that the Red Eye Green Dragon parody I did last year. You may also want to do multiple takes of the same scene, but it all depends on how long you want to film for and of course your stamina. I usually do everything in one take since I've been doing this for so long, but there are some times where I might do a few takes for a specific scene, as I might have thought it would have been funnier to do the line this way after filming it the first or second time. Yeah, sometimes I might not use the alternate takes that I had for that scene, but it's always good to have it because having more is better than having none. I can't tell you exactly how long you should film for, it all varies on what you're doing. Some shoots may take days to even weeks, while others may be done within 20 minutes. My Hero space adventure film was actually all shot in under 5 hours, and that was just all the live action parts, of course. On average, my shooting sessions go, from about an hour to maybe even 3 hours, as I usually film multiple videos in one sitting. Plus, setting up my green screen is such a hassle, and I'd rather have multiple videos filmed while I set it up. Basically, I always stockpile my videos when I make them. I'm usually doing at least 3 projects at a time while filming. After you have finished filming and taking everything down, it's time to get ready for post-production. The most important thing is importing all your footage onto your computer. Now, if you shot this all on your phone or a tablet like a psychopath, you can probably skip this step if you're going to be editing on those devices. I will only be covering the computer perspective, but good luck to those weirdos who edit on their tiny little phone screens. Anyway, you plug in your SD card or whatever you had into your computer and slap all those files into your drive of your choosing. I just throw them into this basic video stuff folder and organize later. I don't normally get to editing on the same day I filmed it, and it might even be weeks to months before I touch a project. It is important though to have your files organized by project so you don't have to worry about it later. I usually record reminders during filming and say something like, hey, everything before this was for this video and everything after this was for this video, or something like that. Obviously, I know not everyone does what I do, but this could all be, useful when filming, and it helps me stay somewhat organized, especially if you're doing multiple projects or scenes. I then sort everything into their correct folder and sort again if it needs to be sorted by scenes, like with my feature films. However you want to organize your files is fine, and it might even be useful to rename your footage files, but I personally don't do that because I'm weird. If you are doing any VFX to your clips, it would be also a good idea to make a separate folder for those and renaming accordingly. I'm not going to tell you how to organize your files, but just know that this is also part of the prepping stage. Speaking speaking of preparing, this also might be a good time to get your assets as well. Assets meaning any backgrounds you may need to use or other VFX elements you don't already have, or even music for your project. When I film one of my regular videos, this is the part where I would go and film all the Garry's Mod footage, as I'm going to need some, if not all, of it for the VFX process. When I do my side tangent videos, I sort of grab what I need while editing and go with the flow unless it's something that I need something specifically. It's also a good time to do any voiceovers and such before getting to the VFX process, as you might be doing some voiceovers for any quote-unquote CGI characters you decide to go with. For my CGI characters, it's just video game characters, but it's still nice to have that voiceover before recording that footage. It's also especially nice to have voiceovers done before editing when doing something that primarily has voiceovers, as you won't have anything to edit obviously. Like I wouldn't have anything to edit with this video if I didn't do these voiceovers. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about VFX before I move over to editing, shall we? This might be a chapter that some of you might skip, and that's okay. Your videos do not need VFX for them to be good. I just have an extra step for my videos, as most of them are shot on a green screen, and that's the bare basic VFX. Now, my workflow has changed a little bit as I no longer use After Effects. I used to take all my green screen clips and throw them into After Effects and do all my chroma keying magic there, along with some other visual effects to those clips. Now, changing a smidge, I'm mostly going to be doing all my chroma keying in my editing software, but for the sake of this, I'll be using Vegas Effects and or Left Angles Autograph. If I need anything extra done that Vegas Pro just can't do on its own, then it's time to bring out the big boys. An example for this is a shot in my most recent Idea Factory video. My character literally jumps into a hell portal, and you can sort of see the setup here. A bit more complicated and moving pieces, and I'd rather have it in its own dedicated VFX program to take care of it. As of writing this, I didn't know exactly what I used, but as of recording my voice lines today, I ended up using Left Angles Autograph, and you can see how much it turned out. So pretty neat, huh? Going off script a little bit, it is important to note that I am using some third-party plugins for my editing software and VFX software. Some of these did come bundled in with a promotion when I bought my video editing software, but this may not also be the case when you buy yours. It's always depending on what types of sales are going on or what types of promotions are going on when buying your video editing software, if you do happen to buy a video editing software. Just for the sake of this video, I'll be talking about the ones that I am using. Starting up is from New Blue. This one is pretty much it has a bunch of different features from titling, video stabilization, transitions, chroma keying, which I actually don't use specifically for Vegas Pro, but I'll get into that in a moment. Then there's video filters, and then there's color correction. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it, and I just happened to get a good deal from a Black Friday sale years ago based off the a bundle promotion that I had earlier, which was able to give me a discount for quote-unquote upgrading. Next up is going to be Boris FX. I ended up just upgrading my plugin from, it was just a basic Permat Studio plugin that just allowed me to do some better chroma keying in Vegas Pro, but I have actually upgraded to the full Continuum package, which does allow me to have some more effects. This is the program that I use, or the plugin I use, sorry, for my chroma keying work, both in Vegas Pro and Vegas Effects, as these are all OFX plugins, so they work in the three programs that I have mentioned. This may be different on what types of programs you're using, and you'd have to either do some research and such. But anyway, Continuum has the chroma keying, it's got diffusion, distorts, transitions, image restoration, even motion graphics, and all this fancy stuff that I haven't used yet, but I will in future videos. Now, last up is another thing that came bundled in with my Continuum package is Particle Illusion Pro, which allows you to make particles or VFX that you can use for your videos. And obviously, I haven't done anything like this yet, and I will probably be playing around with this depending on what I'm trying to go for in future projects, but it's just worth mentioning it. Also, another thing to mention is that I haven't used yet, but I do have it installed, is I do have a third-party software that I do use for VFX. I have a Pro Hide, which basically lets you hide characters chapters on moving images, or basically video. I do have a few things here and there. It all depends on what you're trying to go for, what you're trying to use, and everything. But I can tell you that your best friend is probably Blender, because you can do VFX in Blender, and there's tons of tutorials and such that will, you know, allow you to do these things. But that's just a little side tangent that I'm going on in my VFX side of this chapter, so I do apologize for making this a little bit longer. Let's go ahead and finish this off real quick. For the most part, I just do chroma keying and the occasional muzzle flash and blood splatter, which just happened to come with the Action Essentials 2 thing that I bought so many years ago. Yeah, I might get crazy with teleportation or the portal jumping, but I know what I can do. It's also worth knowing what you can do and knowing the value of your time. While the flower scene in Summer in the Video 8 was neat, it's not something that I would go out of my way for, as you can tell where I cut corners later in the same exact scene. If you want to spend the extra time on VFX, you are more than welcome to do so, but don't expect to get something out every single week. I do believe quality is important, but if you are just starting out, don't overdo it, as you don't want to burn yourself out with one VFX shot. It's sort of why I cut corners back then too. It is okay to challenge yourself, but know your limits, your time, and how much you're willing to do for a shot. Editing is the third and final stage of telling a story. First you wrote it, then you filmed it, and now it's time to put it all together. Editing is also the most time-consuming part of the video creation process. On average, my editing sessions can range from a few hours to basically being a full-time job for a few weeks. It all depends on what your original scripts call for, of course. Speaking of scripts, this is also a good point to hand off where you tell your editor or yourself that, hey, we shot this and this is how I want it to be. The more specifics, the closer it will be to your vision. However, I do everything from pre to post-production, so I don't have to worry about having a middleman just yet. Anyway, remember how I told you about file organization? Hopefully you have all your files all organized where you can just drag and drop everything into your project media tab, or whatever it's called in your editing software of choice, and just get to work. I use Vegas Pro 21 to edit my content as of creating this video, and I know Vegas Pro isn't the most popular amongst other editors, but it does what I need it to do, and I can still make the same content as everyone else does. Your editing software is just a tool, and you will still end up with the same product if you did it in another editing program. Plus, I feel like Vegas Pro is a bit more friendlier with new editors compared to Premiere or DaVinci, or hell, even Final Cut or Avid, but you edit with what you want to edit with. I started off with Windows Movie Maker, moved over to Vegas Movie Studio, and then I upgraded to Vegas Pro, and I have dabbled here and there in Premiere as well. You know, it is good to have multiple softwares under your belt, but edit with what you want to edit with, and don't let people on the internet bully you for using Vegas Pro because it's inferior. It is also worth noting that Vegas Pro is normally on sale for $100 or $200, but DaVinci Resolve is free, so if you want to go that route, that is also okay too. Now with all of that out of the way, it all comes down to editing your piece. I probably edit weird since I was self-taught. The way I do my edits is I put all my clips together to closely follow my story, and that makes a rough edit. My final edit would be anything that additional, such as music, sound effects, text, or even basic VFX. The first pass I do on my edits usually takes the longest, and sometimes I even add in music or sound effects and whatnot before I get to my final edit, as some may be crucial to setting up the pacing of that one particular scene or whatever. All my videos are edited differently, and they all have their own formula that I follow editing wise. They all follow the script from start to finish, unless it's a video with no story like my drone videos, and those are just putting clips together, matching the music sort of thing, but that's a different can of worms I'm not going to get into here. My side tangent videos are an outlier, as I sort of do everything in one go, going with the flow that is. I grab images or videos for backgrounds as I edit, and sort of edit by audio as well. I cut out a lot of the breaths I take and try to make it, so it flows much faster than my normal skits and films. There's not really any dead air, I guess, because everything is just bam, 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 bam. I'm trying to get those out quickly, get the information out quicker than my normal laid back, relaxed skits and whatnot. It's quite the opposite though with my cast member stories, as it was pretty much just slap my voiceover into the timeline and call it a day. The only exception is adding the b-roll and text, but I assume most people just listen to those and they don't really pay attention to the video itself. It's just nice to have as a background. It all depends on what you're editing and what you're going for. I can't exactly explain how to edit your video, as your video will be completely different than mine, even if you had the same source files as me. I don't really know how to explain it verbally, but I'm sure there is footage playing that shows exactly what I'm doing visually, or at least how my edit looks after I was done with it. Again, with all the different series I have on my channel, every series has its own style, and I have my own formulated to my liking. Oh yeah, remember how I told you that the editing is the final stage of telling a story? Well, that's because it is. I've had a few videos change drastically in the stage when I first wrote them. Unless you do everything in one day, which I can't most of the time, your idea might slightly change depending on your mood when you edit on a different day. I think I've had a small handful of videos that turned out exactly how I expected them to, and even those are few and far between. Not every scene in a video is going to be how it was in your head originally, as you might find a better purpose for that scene, or it might do better after another scene, and all these other factors you choose in the edit. There are some fan edits of movies out there that completely change the story, and some of these fan edits completely make the movie better. In some cases, some of these are actually official edits re-released by the studio, like by the editor or the director or whatnot. Now, some movies unfortunately die on the cutting room floor, and not every video that you make will be editable, like you're able to edit it. I don't know if that's a word or not. It's okay if you have to take things out or add things in and do reshoots and pick up shots and whatnot. If it's not working in the edit, it's okay to tweak it so it does work. I've even had a few videos that I was missing shots and I had to throw something in last minute since I didn't have access to that location anymore. It's okay to basically tear apart your story and rewrite it in the editing phase, especially if you're doing a comedy, because you can get away with a lot of fourth wall breaks and such, but that's a different thing that you have to just do over time and learn as you go. Again, it's all trial and error, and it all depends on what works for you. I would be dumb for not mentioning this, but your thumbnails are just as important as the video itself. Obviously, you don't have to spend the same amount of time on your thumbnail as you did with the video. It's just important to have something that's eye-catching and sort of explains your video in a still format. There are tons of videos on how to make the perfect thumbnail, and I still couldn't tell you which one to watch. I've probably lost a ton of potential viewers to my thumbnails and even my titles, and that's the sad truth of creating content online. You could have the best video in the world, but a bad thumbnail or title could mean life or death for your video. I'm not trying to scare you into creating the perfect thumbnail, as I just want to make it clear that it's something important to consider when you're creating your video. Luckily, there is a new feature on YouTube that allows you to have more than one and see which one is doing the best depending on how many people have viewed your video. Even if you have one bad thumbnail, your other one or two can make up for it. Just don't stress over it and try to have your thumbnail match something close to the beginning of your video if possible. That seems to work the best. Now, editing thumbnails can be done in photo editing software like Photoshop or Affinity Photo, or you could be weird like me and do it all in your editing software itself. As long as it looks good to you and follows the basics of graphic design, you should be fine. Worst case, YouTube always auto-generates thumbnails for you, and you can always stick with one of those until you learn. This also used to be the main thing when I joined YouTube, so your video was defined by one of the 3 stills from your video. It better be a good still then. This is both the easiest and hardest part of content creation, sending your work to the void of social media. After you're all done rendering that video out and creating that sweet thumbnail, it's time to upload that sucker to YouTube or whatever else you upload content to. For this, I will be using YouTube for obvious reasons. Basically, you gotta come up with a nice title and you gotta write out that basic description. Now, just a quick side note, most people don't put descriptions, or they just have like nothing that relates to the video in the description, and that is a personal pet peeve of mine. Like, have at least 1 or 2 sentences describing your video, man. I don't know, that's just my personal pet peeve, and I'm not gonna get into that here. Anyway, titles are also important, and it's okay to have a simple one too. You can always look through my back catalog and see which videos are popular and what titles they had, and all that stuff. Some of my more popular videos had a decade to get there, while others jumped to 17k views in 2 weeks, and I believe that video is now sitting over 20k, so yeah. Just know when you upload a video publicly, it's out in the void now. Don't let it bog you down if it doesn't get a billion views in the first day, as the algorithm works in strange ways I couldn't even begin to describe. I don't know the secrets of YouTube, even though I've been on the platform for over a decade and a half. I just know I upload it, and if it gets views, cool. If it doesn't, cool. At least I got to make something neat for someone to watch. Now, you could always help it out by promoting it on other platforms as well. Whenever I post a new video, I always have a post go live with my social media accounts. One for Blue Sky, one for Facebook, one for Instagram, and one for Twitter. While Instagram is just a thumbnail, I try to make a story and link that goes with that story. Basically, when you see the stories on Instagram, you tap on it, it goes, hey, this is the video, click on the link to go watch it. The other social media accounts are a little bit easier, as I can just post the link directly, and some of them you can even watch the video on the social media site itself without having to go to YouTube, but I don't know who just watches it in the little tiny screen on their desktop, but that's besides the point. There are other social media sites too, like Threads or Mastodon or whatever else, and you can use those places to promote it as well, but just be careful of where you share it, as there are some sites like Reddit that get all pissy when you self-promote, but they're okay with someone uploading a clip of a guy slipping on a banana 47 million different times, or re-uploading the same cat video and whatnot, and that's just Reddit for you. I'm not gonna get into that here. That's going to do it for this video. I know it was both informative and not informative at the same time. I just wanted to give a peek on how I make my content and try to keep it vague enough for those trying to follow along and make their own. This isn't exactly a tutorial video, but more so an overview video. If you truly want to make content similar to a creator such as myself or someone else, it all boils down to watching their content and seeing how they do things and getting that feel. I know I got a comment asking about my comedy style, and that's just sort of trial and error, man. Creating content isn't going to be perfect, and it takes time to create. It's okay to watch others for inspiration, but you gotta go out and try it on your own. Now, if you want me to make a series where I go into more detail about my overall process, please let me know, and I will put some time aside and actually go into the nitty-gritty details, going step by step on how I make my videos. But this is just a general overview of how I create my content. And if this was enough, then cool, but if I get a million people saying, I really want to know the nitty-gritty details of how you make every single one of your videos, then maybe I'll make a series on that, but that all depends on, you know, how much people want it, and honestly, I think this should be satisfactory enough for most people, and I feel like this video sort of covered a general basis of most of my videos and series I have on my channel. So just my advice to you is, if you want to try to make something in my style, you just gotta watch my content, man. Now let's go ahead and wrap up this video, as it's gone way too long, and I know some of you don't have the attention span to sit through however long this video ended up being. But regardless, if you made it to this point and you didn't skip to the end, thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And if you did watch this entire thing, that means that you are interested in my content, and that is the best thing that I could ask for. I'm glad that if you did learn anything, that it's useful to you, and if you didn't, the thing is, you can always ask questions. I will respond to mostly every comment that I see, unless you just call me a big fat nerd, and I'll probably just ignore you. I'll try my best to answer your comments and questions and such if you have any. Until then, stay fresh and don't eat any moldy bread, okay? It's bad for you. Seriously, don't eat moldy bread. It's bad for you. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, Jim. Stop it. Okay, bye.